Welcome back to my channel. It's good to see you again. So we are doing watercolor basics today. What are the basic things that you need? We're gonna do a color wheel first, which is really important. And then I'm going to give you all those tips that you need as a beginner for watercolor art. But I'm gonna ask you to do one thing before we start. Please prepare your chart like this from the colors that you have. I'm sure you have a set already, a watercolor set. Mine is something like this. So it is very different when you look at the colors like this than when you actually look at here. They're much lighter. You have to know how they look on paper before we start, okay? Today I will be using Strathmore paper, watercolor paper, cold press. If you like my videos, if you find them helpful, please feel free to like, share, and please subscribe, because that gives me a lot of motivation. And also, you know, YouTube algorithm works that way. If you like full tutorial of all my drawings and paintings, they're available on patreon.com/ecegürler. If you have your brushes, you have your color, you have your scale or chart done, then we can start. In order to do our color wheel, we will divide this circle into 12 sections. You will see the 3 tones of the same color because I'm adding more water to make them lighter. We have 3 primary colors, yellow, blue, and red. And when we combine those 2 primary colors, we will have a secondary color, such as red and yellow will make orange, and yellow and blue will make green. And then we have tertiary colors, which we have when we combine secondary color with a primary color. So this chart is very helpful because the colors that are across from each other are called complementary colors. These colors, when they are used in the same painting, they make each other pop out, which is very good. But once you mix them, you get this really ugly grayish, brownish, muddy color. So you have to be really careful about this. This is why it is important. The first tip you have to know is to know your brushes. There are so many brush types. The most common ones that I want to show you is right here. The first one is the round one. It's a big one, number 11. And we have another round one, I think it's number 9. We make so many paintings with this, portraits and nature, trees and everything almost. And we have the flat top brushes, and we have the cornered areas with these very easily, such as a house or a box. And this is the tiny one, I believe it's number 3 or 2. And with this one you get the tiniest details. And with this one I will show you what to do in a second. You need 2 cups of water. You dip in the first one first, and then you go to the second one so that you have a clean brush. Number 3 tip is a palette. You have to mix your colors in a palette or something look like a palette. Number 4, masking tape. You need a masking tape in watercolor because your paper will bulk and it will pull some paint, and you don't want that. Also, tape gives a very nice frame effect. And the other tip is watercolor paper only. Don't use any paper because it's not going to work the same. So the next tip is about wet on wet method. What is wet on wet method? You wet your paper first very nicely. You don't flood it, of course, but at the same time it should be thoroughly wet. And then your paint, your brush will be wet as well, so it should have this kind of effect when you drop your paint. This is perfect when you want to create a background, a sky, let's say, because that really blends much more easily. If you have a tissue or cotton, this is another tip. You can use it to clean your brush, or you can use it just to correct your mistakes. The same thing happens with the cotton. I will show you how to do that. Let's say I want to erase this muddy color. I just pick up with my dry cotton onto wet surface and I pick up all that paint, or my tissue. Look, I wetted the surface first and then picked up all the paint I just put in. This is just so easy. Clean water splash effect on your wet paint. If you splash clean water, you will have this beautiful starry effect. You can actually use it for a background of a starry night or a snowy day, for example. Let your paint dry. It's so important that before you do any other layers, after your first layer, you let it dry. If you're impatient, then dry it with a blow dryer, and you make sure that the surface is dry before you go in for another layer. More layers for opaque results, especially when you're doing a darker night, for example. You need these dark colors. You need to make multiple layers because, as you saw, when the watercolor paint dries, it gets a lighter shade. I'm trying to make a little bit of Milky Way effect here. Gouache. Now the tip is white gouache. Why do I need white gouache? Why not white watercolor? Because white watercolor is not opaque enough. It's very translucent. But with the gouache, you can have a very nice effect. Now we will have a snow or star effect with just a toothbrush and a wax paper. So you put your wax paper and cover the areas that you don't want to get your white paint on, and you gently splash all this white gouache on your night sky to give that starry effect. So toothbrush gives a very tiny star size, so you can decide on how much you want, and if you want larger kind of size stars or snow, you can always go with your brush and you can spray like that. We learned wet on wet, but what is wet on dry method? You make sure that your paint is dry and then you go with your wet brush and you make this tiny details for the smaller details. But you should make sure that your brush is not too wet, that it's not dripping water on your paper. Change your water, guys. This is too dirty. We need to work with clean water. Another tip I want to give you is to go from darker to lighter in your shading, because this is how nature works. Nothing is like always have sharp boundaries between colors. So if you want to switch from red to orange, which is I'm about to do, it's always better to go to the lighter shade slowly. This is gonna be a beautiful sunset. And because I'm doing this not from a reference photo but from my head, I change my mind a lot, so I apologize if I made a lot of changes along the way. Another tip is horizontal strokes for the water. Water and sky follows horizontal lines, so it's good to have them instead of vertical, have them more horizontal, and even you can give the wavy lines to give wave effect. For small details, as you can see, I'm holding my brush very tight because I want to have more control over my brush. I'm not doing a larger area like sky, but I'm doing the sun, so I have to be more careful. So in order to give the reflection of the sun effect, I'm using my white gouache as I did before, and I am doing these little gentle horizontal lines on the sea. But I'm not going to leave them white like that because it's not realistic then. I'm going to get my tiny like number 2 brush and go with the same blue that the sea is, and leave more horizontal lines to give realistic effect. If you have accidental drops just like I'm about to do, watch it. 1, 2, 3. Woohoo! What are you gonna do? You go get a tissue and just lift them up right away before they actually go into the paper. Mix colors. If you don't like the orange you have in your palette, just change it. Add some more yellow, add some more red. This is all in your creativity, guys. Just mix your colors and get the colors that you want on your palette. Another tip is how to make clouds. I get a lot of questions about this. So you have the wet paper and you put your wet paint on it just like this, and while your paper is still wet, you will go in with your tissue or your cotton to make this realistic cloud effects, and then you will dry your paint. Let me show you. Just gently, I'm just pressuring very gently and making these very cute effect, picking up the paint. And then let's see how it looks when you dry. In order to give reflection on the mountains, for example, I used a little bit darker tones to give the shadowy feeling. And now it's time to show you how to use this brush, guys. I just dipped it into my wet paint, which is green, and I am gently applying onto my paper. My paper is dry, by the way, here, just not very wet, and I'm drying it up before I go with my second layer. You can add different greens to make it even look more realistic, because that's how nature works. You can even make the bushes with this kind of method, and grasses too, of course. The final tip that I want to give you guys, please remove the tape carefully, because we apply heat and it affects it, and you should make sure that your painting is totally completely dry before you remove your tape and lift your painting up. I really hope that you like this video, guys. If you like it, please click on that like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel to show your support. I really appreciate it. See you in my next video.